We're here in Hackett looking at some examples of great nature strips. So we've got a nature strip here on the left that's been planted with native plants, and on the right you can see what a traditional grass nature strip looks like. I'm Edwina Robinson. I'm a landscape architect and founder of the Climate Factory, and I work with people to create climate cooling landscapes. The nature strip is the parcel of land from your property down to the curb, and it may have a footpath along it, but you're expected to maintain it even though you don't own it. We're going to talk about the role of the nature strip, what you can and can't do, how to prepare it, and what are some of the great plants you can use to make it beautiful. There's a few rules you need to be aware about if you're going to create a garden on your nature strip. So the first thing is planting heights, generally around 500 millimetres or half a metre. If you're in a bushfire zone, you're only allowed to use plants up to 20 centimetres. And you're going to have to check if you're in a heritage zone if you're allowed to make changes to your nature strip. And you need to leave room to let people get off the road safely onto the nature strip. So you might be wondering, what are the steps you need to take to create a verge garden? Well, here's some ideas. Probably the first thing to think about is making a dial before you dig inquiry. That's to find out what are the services that are running through here, because you don't want to dig any of them up. The next thing to think about is how are you going to deal with the grass here? So I'd recommend against using herbicides. Rather, you can use a slower method called solarisation. And that's where you place black builder's plastic all over the ground, and eventually the grass underneath it will die. There's 3 principles to create a great landscape and keep you cool in a hot summer. The first is to create great soil by adding lots of organics. The next thing to do is slow down the water and get it into the soil. And lastly, plant densely so there's no bare earth. If you do those 3 things, the plants in your verge will thrive. There's a few things to consider when you first plant your garden. You want to get it through the really hot summer period, so you're going to have to apply a little bit of extra water. But the other thing that's really important is to make sure you've mulched around your plants. So you might use something like a coarse forest litter to about 75 millimetres deep. How do I know what to grow? Well, if you're thinking about growing natives, there's a whole lot of specialist native nurseries here in Canberra, and there's also a list of plants at the back of the ACT Nature Strip guidelines. If you're interested in attracting pollinators to your garden, you're going to want to choose a whole lot of different low plants, like this one, that flower at different times of the year. So our nature strip houses our beautiful street trees like this eucalyptus here. So we want to look after our street trees and make sure that they're getting enough water and air down to their roots. So I just want to show you some examples of plants that you can use on your nature strip, and this is a really great example. This is something called Rhagodia spinescens or saltbush, and you can see it's a low silvery plant that gets little red fruit and that are actually edible, and you can eat the leaves as well. Here's a great native ground cover called Myoporum parvifolium or creeping boobiella. As you can see, it spreads out along the ground. It's great for little animals to get in amongst, and it gets really pretty white flowers. There's also 2 forms available, the fine leaf form that's here and this broader leaf form. This is another beautiful ground cover for your nature strip. It's a Grevillea royal mantle, and you can see the really pretty pinkish flowers here with the yellow on the ends. This has to be one of my favourites on this verge. This is Duentia perfoliata or Digger's Speedwell, and I just love the silvery green foliage contrasted with the mauve flowers. I think the pollinators would go crazy for this one. If you're not sure where to start, Have a chat to someone in your local area who's already created their own nature strip. And you might just want to think about creating one small patch at a time. How about creating a whole cool street? What about if you and your neighbours got together and planted up all your verges so you created a beautiful wildlife corridor? Go on, have a chat with them today.